Hello again, my friends. It is Ray over at CigarClimatology, everyone's not so favorite critic on the Cuban cigar. If you watched my last video review, we did a little bit of reviewing, or I did a review on the punch coronations. And of course that was a newer punch cigar. I believe it was 015 vintage, and it really wasn't a very good cigar. And when I posted up the cigar review over on Friends of Habanos, my intention really was to follow that review up with a Royal Selection number 12 punch from the 90s. This is a cigar that I really used to enjoy a lot, and I knew that I had one more box hidden around here, and I did happen to find it, and I was going to review that. But another friend of mine had asked me a question about how this cigar stacked up against other punch cigars. And unfortunately, a lot of the questions that get directed to me, or I think just to the general audience with regards to how cigars taste, seem to originate from a position of how they compare, as in flavor profile. And unfortunately, you know, I just don't really think about cigars too much that way anymore. And there are a number of reasons for it. I'm not going to go into all of them, you know, here and now. They're certainly subject to debate. It's just my opinion. It's frankly not all that important. But to me, a cigar, like any other object that has utility, it either works or it doesn't work. I either like the way it works or I don't like the way it works. It's either adequate or inadequate, and then with some varying range of how well it performed. You know, it's simple. 6 foot tape measure, okay, or 2 meter tape measure. It's terrible for measuring 7 feet. It just doesn't work. But in you know, around the shop, if I want to use it for small things, it's fantastic, and it has more utility than, you know, a 25 foot tape measure, which is just ginormous, and I don't want to carry around. So when I'm working on something small, you know, humidor project, or I just want to, you know, I don't have to explain a friggin' tape measure to anybody, but you know, this I can drop in my apron, or put it in my pants pocket, and I can carry it around. I mean, this one's got even a little keychain link on it. So utility is something that bleeds over into the cigar world for me as well. That's very often my mindset. Does it work? Does it not work? Is it the right tool for the job? And the cigar world for me is the same. If the cigar is working for me, then it's a good cigar, it's an excellent cigar, it's a sublime cigar. If it's not working for me, it's below good, it's average, it's below average, it's poor, it's a lousy cigar. And since I don't really tend to number rate, because people, in my opinion, can't really relate to a number, with the exception of Sublime, a 100-point cigar. I think people understand that. I think people understand a cigar, let's say, that you rate over 95, for example. This is a sublime cigar. This is what people are going to call an excellent cigar. So I tend to group them more into logical groups as I see them, using just common everyday descriptors: good, excellent, poor, lousy, sublime, wonderful, etc., etc. So what I thought we would do today is we would smoke a Punch Super Selection number 2. Now these are from 02, and I'll probably grab some still pictures so we can cut it into the video for you. Let's bring the camera a little bit closer. We'll open up the box. Now in here, just for the sake of storage, I've got some Hoyo Petit Robustos that are in here keeping the cigars company. So it's just open space. because I'll lose track of these cigars if I don't keep the original box. I keep the original box so that I remember what they are, because of course they're bandless cab cigars. So let's take a look inside, and let's light one up and talk about it. Now first, you know, I just have to say, who in their right mind does not enjoy the 50 cab or cabinet selection of the cigar of their choice, or for no reason? But these are O2 cigars, and like I said, they're mixed in with some of these little Hoyo. Boy, these things actually, these smell wonderful. These are very good. I'm sorry, I'm not really a believer in the migrating flavor and migrating profile theories. It just doesn't do anything for me. Now, you know, so here we go. I mean, unfortunately, I just have to say, really, and again, this might turn out to be an excellent cigar, and I hope so, okay? But, you know, this poor guy is really crude. If I were a cigar maker, I wouldn't make cigars that look like this. But, you know, again, I'm not a cigar maker. And the aesthetics, I really mean little to nothing, okay? So let's go back to the utilitarian view. I don't really care what it looks like. But when you pay good money for a product like this, I mean, obviously, it would really be nice to just see, you know, no vein. I don't mind the tooth, but, you know, a lot of this crude appearance, again, you know, natural marks a little bit on the leaf, that doesn't bother me. But this guy looks pretty crude. It kind of looks like I could go in here and rasp sandpaper, you know, rasp wood with it. It's a little gnarled looking. But I'm going to pick this one just for the sake of it, because I happen to pick it up. Good firm cigar. So, you know, O2 cigar, you never can tell. But it was, you know, maybe a bleed over from O1, and I've always really liked O1 cigars. I know that a lot of people are really critical of them. So you guys know a lot of things just appear and disappear out of view sometimes when you watch my videos. This is actually my this is my test humidor, and you guys have seen it on other videos, but I've been over here fooling with the logic on it. And because it's cool in here today, so we're actually doing a lot of dehydration cycles. And I did some redesign on the interior, and actually designed a new heater appliance. I don't know whether this is going to make the video or not, but this is where I'm going to toss the box. I just usually walk off camera and I go ahead and toss the box in someplace, and people probably wonder, well, where the hell's the box going? But this is where it's going to go today, or at least for a while. Let's find some room in here. And there it goes for now. Of course, it's actually pretty humid in here, so you can see the humidity is just spiked immediately. Another little lesson here about air exchanges. I don't recall when this cooler last cycled, so it might take it a second for it to pick that up and do something with it. Now it's doing something with it now. It looks like it has popped back on, and it's going to go ahead and dehydrate for me. Again, that's one of the cool things about having controlled coolers, man. You can't, I couldn't do without them. But that's not what the video's for. So the cigar's put away. Let's talk about reviewing it. So the lovely Lady Piggy has re-emerged. She just went to get a couple of things to make me an apple pie, which is always a good idea. But she is back, and since it is late in the afternoon here, we're probably going to spend a little time, her, the pooch, and I, on one of the porches, and that's where I'll take in the majority of this cigar. But let's go ahead and get it started so I can eventually get the video done and spend a little time with my wife. Now, again, I tend to wet the head of my cigars a little bit because I cut them kind of deep. Probably just because I'm careless more than anything else, but I like to try and get as much surface area so I get even draw through the entirety of the folds of the cigar. Everyone's got their own theories on that, I'm sure. But since I do store cigars rather dry, as most of you guys know, I give a little wet there to I give a little wet there simply to make sure that I don't shatter the cap. And while I often do this, I kind of leave it so thin that it begins to come off. It is what it is. Well, it does have a good draw. The Super Selection number 2 seems to be an author favorite, but it's never really been one of mine. There are a lot of other cigars this size that I really tend to prefer, and as we begin to get into this size of cigar, they just begin to lose my interest. You know, as we get closer and closer to 50 ring, the cigars just get a little bit too unwieldy for me, a little bit too large in diameter. I've got some theories about that. We can talk about that sometime in the future. But like I said, this guy's it's kind of crude. I mean, I can feel a lot of unevenness in the binder. I don't know whether these are items coming through from the actual filler, or the binder's just a mess. I mean, who knows? But as long as the cigar draws, that's all that really matters. It's oh, I don't have any lights on in here. It's a not a real deep Colorado, but you know, a medium dark brown. The aroma off the foot is very pleasing. Let's get it lit up. Well, it's got a good positive light, and the first draws are actually really good. Surprise, surprise. Now, these cigars actually have a reputation for being quite powerful. That's from what I recall. At least, you know, again, following the author blogs, the written, you know, the written testaments of the famous Cuban cigar critiques, who typically rate the cigar rather highly. Nothing super positive to really mention beyond the first puff, but it has been a few days since I've smoked. This is often the case with me. I really don't actually smoke every day for the most part, and the first taste of tobacco to me is almost always excellent. It doesn't really matter how mediocre the cigar is. The first taste of any cigar just is always good. The first, or at least one of the things that I noticed first, was a little bit of pinch in the nose. There is some coarse pepper flavor in this. I don't know that I'll put it, say, in the white or black pepper category, but it's fairly sharp. Sorry, I just feel like I got a cigar. I'm sorry, a mustache hair going up my nose. The smoke off the foot is not particularly appealing. Again, sometimes I really like the smoke off the foot of a cigar. This one is a little bit redolent of just burning leaves, which not really fragrant, not really Again, not really redolent of anything that has a perfume or bouquet. Mostly just, like I said, the smell of embers. The retro's good. Nothing bad there. I don't know. Frankly, not really that much taste. I know it's probably what's going through a lot of people's heads with a 15-year-old cigar is, oh, you waited too long there. Blah, blah, blah. Sorry, guys, I don't buy into that. To me, a properly stored cigar really has, for all intents and purposes, an unlimited lifespan. I'm not really one that is a believer in or a portrayer of the volatile oils theories where, you know, cigars just evaporate into the ambient. Don't really buy into that. You know, along those lines, since we're talking, it kind of makes me think that if that really were the case, then when you burned a cigar and then you just smelled the smoke versus tasted it, you should have some sort of similar type of characteristic. The smoke itself would have no smell. With olfactory and gustatorial senses being so closely matched, I just tend to think that if a cigar has no, you know, has lost its taste due to some form of linear or exponential decay, then it simply follows that the smell of the smoke off the foot would be similar. It should be very bland. You know, this is rather sharp, so it has no really relationship to what I'm tasting, you know, here at all. But so again, I can't buy into that. To me, if this cigar is bland, it's based on how it was made. There's probably some core tobacco products that are just not present or in the right quantities when this cigar was blended. Now, of course, we got a lot of life left in this cigar. We're only down, you know, 10 millimeters or so, about a little less than half an inch. And, you know, I'm hoping that there's going to be a lot more life left in it. Now, to be honest with you, while I haven't been the type recently, that abides by these flavor profiles, I have been looking for a certain flavor that I do relate to punch cigars. That was one of the things that caused me to pick up the boxes of those punch coronation tubos. I was looking to replicate or replace a flavor in the Royal Selection 12. And this cigar doesn't have it either. So, you know, again, just to let you know, I think this was more to my friend's question. Forgive me, Stefan, I don't know whether you pronounce it Stefan or Stephen. I know sometimes you guys, everyone pronounces their name a little bit different, but this is geared towards you. I think maybe that was the answer that you were looking for. How closely does this cigar or some of these older punch cigars relate to that newer cigar? To be perfectly honest with you, at this stage in the game, I can't tell you that this cigar is really any better than that cigar. Now, I haven't smoked a zillion of these. About the time that I picked up this cab, was really about the time I was losing interest in cigars as they began to approach 50 ring. And my remaining interest in larger ring cigars, even though this might be considered a middle ring, I'd have to look back, but I'm going to consider this a larger ring cigar from my viewpoint and from my perspective. I've just, over the years, I've lost a lot of interest in these cigars. Not in this cigar in particular, but just these, what I consider larger Vitola cigars. Punchy here is developing a little bit of that twang, that that kind of earthy fungal taste. It's interesting that another gentleman had, this is you again, Stephen, had brought up a tea taste, something that, of course, I've tasted teas, but the individual flavors that he was talking about in the cigar is not something that I'm experienced with, this rice tea taste, or this rice tea mixture. Again, I'm not familiar with that taste. But I can't say that I'm really tasting anything that's tea-like. Now, I like my tea straight, so to me, a tea taste is very pronounced and not necessarily sweet, because again, I don't sweeten my tea. But I'm not really tasting it here. I have had a green tea taste, like an English, black tea taste. I've had some of this, this very basic, earthy, strong tea when I was doing a bunch of experimenting with different types of teas. That just didn't really do it much for me. It was almost a little bit too herbal tasting for me. And I like, I guess, what I would consider kind of more fragrant type teas, jasmine tea, more of these teas that have a little bit maybe lighter body but more complex flavor. Well, 3 draws, that's a lot for me. I'm working on milking something out of it. And I'm probably trying a little too hard. Again, nothing really to write home about. As it sits right now, I wouldn't buy this cigar again. But it is what it is. We're only into it for less than an inch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to enjoy a little bit of time with my wife and my pooch, and smoke a little bit more of this cigar, and maybe in an inch or two, or if something shows up that's a bit more interesting, we'll come back and we'll talk about it. So I'll see you in the next segment. So we're down to about half the cigar, maybe I don't know, 3/5. And what I started doing is, still, just because of the diameter of the cigar, I've kept up a kind of a 2 or 3 puff technique to get enough smoke and to get enough flavor. But I've gone much shallower, so I started smoking much slower the second I got away from the camera. About the first 5 minutes, quite frankly, I was really in the I'm going to pan this cigar mode. And after I sat down, opened a beer, kind of relaxed a little bit, started smoking the cigar more slowly, it did open up some. It's a very interesting and very unique cigar. The smoke off the foot is quite pungent and pinches the nose. I had a kind of a massive retrohale, and wow, I mean, it really stung my sinuses. It was like chlorine going through my sinuses. So the smoke itself is quite pungent. Flavor-wise, the complexity and nuance has really increased a lot. There is a little bit of that, what I call fungal flavor, the raw mushroom and kind of herbivorous taste. It's now lightly unctuous, and the best way for me to describe it is a little bit of a tallow taste, which really goes hand in hand with that the oily mouthfeel and texture, and a hint of paraffin. And it has also gone through a bit of a soapy taste, which was a little bit off-putting. That was kind of when I was at the I'm going to pan the cigar mode. A little too much of that soapy taste, that kind of, I don't know, lithium grease taste is something that's off-putting to me, that I don't really like. But a little bit of it for um, for the sake of texture and for the sake of nuance and complexity, is not bad at all. The cigar is not extremely strong, nor is it extremely robust. It does not really have a strong constitution from a strictly taste perspective, but it does hold its own, and it does actually require some attention to smoke to pick up the nuance. So Connie and I are just talking about landscaping and a couple of other things, but I really have turned into enjoying the cigar. It has not gone out. It's not required any real lights. Again, once I just got to sit back, relax, not be under the eye in the sky, it's turned into quite an enjoyable cigar. I have concluded that the cigar just does need to be smoked extremely slowly. And when you're relaxed and you take your time with it and allow it to relax. Again, it's not gone out, and I have been yapping, so it's fine from a RH percent water content perspective. It's a little damp here today. We're getting a little bit of the onshore breeze, and it's coolish for Isla Pigfish. It's 72.5 degrees and 62.5 RH in here in the shop. It's a bit cooler outside. I'll probably put a sweatshirt on it here in a second, and probably a bit moister outside. It's might very well be 68, 70 RH outside. I'm looking to put my finger on the herbal nature, and I just can't put my finger on it. I'd have to say, if anything, it reminds me a bit of garam masala. If you were to take one of these Indian blended spices and put your finger in it and just taste the spice, the mixture of spices, it does tend to have that kind of garam masala taste. And I used to taste that quite often in cigars. And of course, again, this is certainly an older cigar, but I tend to forget because I don't taste it every day. Definitely the smoked paprika garam masala taste. It's definitely there. So that's all for now. I'm going to go back outside, enjoy a little bit more of my late afternoon while I still have a shred of sunlight left, and I'll be back to finish it up. But this one hasn't been a waste, not at all. So I'll see you in a few. Oh boy. So my friends, it's time to sum this one up. It turned out to be a really good cigar. I'm really happy that I smoked it. A little off the beaten path for me, you know, liking cigars like the Grandes de España, the complexity, a little bit more of the nuance cigar, but this was a good cigar. And I guess after so many years of giving them away one at a time, excuse me, they were certainly worth holding on to and certainly worth keeping. Actually, this one gave me a little bit of a buzz, to be perfectly honest with you. Nice slow smoker. God, I have to have been smoking it for well over an hour. I haven't been watching the time, but the sun's going down out there. I got my sweatshirt on, so it's changed from back patio weather to being a bit on the cool side. As you can see, there's not much left of the cigar. It ran its course. You know, I'm not the type to take it down to, you know, 3/8 of an inch just for the hell of beating the hell out of it. It ran its course. Began to get a little bitter, and they tell you when they're done. And this one was done a while ago. To sum it up, the smoked paprika is really how it finished out flavor profile wise, and the garam masala taste, mildly unctuous, nothing to complain about. It was a real good smoker. Started a little bit on the slow side, and like I said, about the first inch or so was, you know, was nothing much, but you can't just smoke an inch off of a cigar and expect it to be Valhalla. You know, I'd say that if you could lay your hands on some of these, it'd be worth doing if the price wasn't too high, but we all know how that goes. These are probably the most sought after of these punches, maybe along with the Black Prince. But I'll give it a good rating. I'll call it somewhere between good and excellent, and it might have definitely pushed its way into the excellent category. I enjoyed it, and I enjoyed spending the time with my wife smoking it. I've also enjoyed my time with you guys out there in television land doing the review. So I hope you like it, and I'll see you on FOH on my channel and in cyberspace. Thanks for watching.